The weight of silence, love disguised as cruelty. Everyone thinks Itachi Uchiha was a heartless killer. But the truth is, he was a man who chose to die every single day he stayed alive. By the end of this video, you will understand why Itachi's sacrifice was not heroic, not evil, but unbearably human. Itachi wanted peace, not glory. He wanted the fighting to stop before it reached his little brother. More than anything, he wanted Sasuke to live without carrying the hatred of an endless war. But that peace demanded a price no child should ever be asked to pay. He was gifted, praised, and feared before he understood himself. Adults placed expectations on him that even grown men would break under. And inside all that pressure, Itachi learned one lesson early. If he didn't act, others would suffer instead. The night everything shattered was not driven by rage. It was driven by responsibility. He didn't kill because he wanted power. He killed because someone convinced him that sacrifice was the only language the world understood. And once he crossed that line, there was no path back to innocence. His desire was simple: protect Sasuke, end the cycle, become the villain, so someone else could remain pure. The obstacle was impossible. Peace required blood, love demanded cruelty, and the village he protected would never thank him for it. So Itachi made a choice that erased his future. He chose to carry the hatred alone. He chose to be remembered as a monster. And with that choice, he sentenced himself to a life without comfort, without truth, without rest. Every step after that was consequence. Every silence was intentional. Every cold look was a shield. Because if Sasuke ever learned the truth too soon, the sacrifice would collapse. The more Itachi acted cruel, the safer Sasuke became. But safety came with decay. Itachi's identity began to rot from the inside. He could no longer tell where the mission ended and where his own feelings began. Love was no longer something he could express. It became something he had to hide behind violence. This is where the story stops being about duty and starts being about damage. When a person suppresses their pain long enough, it doesn't disappear. It changes shape. It becomes numbness. It becomes control. Itachi controlled everything. His words, his expressions, even his death was planned, because control was the only way he could survive the weight of what he had done. This is a trauma response. When someone learns that emotions cause destruction, they bury them. They become calm. They become distant. Not because they don't feel, but because feeling is dangerous. For Itachi, love and loss became inseparable. To love someone meant eventually destroying yourself. So he accepted suffering as proof of devotion. Pain wasn't a punishment, it was the currency of protection. But something was quietly breaking. No matter how perfect the plan, the human mind cannot live as a lie forever. Each time Sasuke looked at him with hatred, Itachi lost another piece of himself. And yet, he kept going. Because if he stopped, everything he sacrificed would be meaningless. And that fear trapped him deeper than any prison. He wasn't chasing peace. He was running from the idea that all this pain might be for nothing. Sacrifice became his identity. Without it, he didn't know who he was. When a person builds their entire self around enduring pain, letting go feels like betrayal. So Itachi endured, not because it healed anyone, but because stopping would force him to face the emptiness underneath. This is the quiet cruelty of self-sacrifice. It convinces you that your suffering has meaning, even when it's slowly erasing you from the inside. And somewhere beneath the mask of the perfect plan, a fragile hope remained, waiting for the moment truth would finally be allowed to breathe again someday. Itachi's life was a series of invisible chains. Every decision was made with someone else's future in mind. Every smile was calculated. Every word he spoke, a lie carefully chosen to guide Sasuke toward hatred at just the right time. The turning point was not a battle. It was a quiet understanding, buried deep inside him, that no one would ever see the whole story. He realized that to protect the people he loved, he had to be condemned by them, and that realization was heavier than any weapon he could wield. He wasn't just a brother or a ninja. He became a symbol of fear, a symbol of control, a symbol of the unbearable truth that sometimes love looks like cruelty. Every choice he made was a reflection of inner conflict. He desired peace. He desired recognition for his humanity. But those desires were impossible to reconcile with the world he lived in. and so he embraced the only path left, one where he bore the darkness alone. This is what happens when power and empathy collide. Itachi understood both. He knew the strength to end lives and the weight of protecting them. He saw the cost of inaction and the cost of action, and he accepted that the line between hero and villain is often drawn in blood. Sasuke's hatred became his shield. The more his brother cursed him, the safer he was. And in that paradox, Itachi found purpose. The more pain he took on himself, the more he protected the one he loved. But protection became a prison, and freedom a memory. Psychologically, this is identity under extreme strain. When a person sacrifices relentlessly, their own sense of self begins to dissolve. Itachi didn't just hide his feelings, he dissolved them. He became a strategy, a plan, a necessary evil. Human connection was a luxury he could not afford. Yet, in the silence of his final days, something human remained. The man behind the mask had not disappeared. Every choice, every lie, was still rooted in love. Pain had become a language he mastered, and through it, he spoke a truth only Sasuke could someday understand. He wasn't running from responsibility, he was running toward it, faster than anyone else could bear. Because taking the weight alone was the only way to give Sasuke a chance at light. He became the villain the world needed so his brother could remain unbroken. And in the end, the revelation is heartbreaking. Itachi did not kill for power. He did not kill for revenge. He killed to preserve life, by sacrificing his own humanity. The truth reframes everything. All the hatred, all the fear, all the isolation, was never for himself. It was a language of love, spoken in a form no one else could ever translate. This is not a story about heroism. It is a story about the invisible cost of devotion. Sometimes, you don't want to be loved. You want someone else to survive. You want certainty for them, even if it leaves you empty. And that's where life lessons hide in darkness. We all face moments where protecting someone else feels more important than protecting ourselves. And in that choice, we discover the fragility of the human heart. We learn that love can demand unbearable decisions, and that sometimes the strongest people are those who suffer quietly, unseen. Itachi's death was not an escape. It was a final act of protection, a silent message to the world and to Sasuke, that love can survive through pain, that sacrifice has its meaning, even if it's misunderstood. He left behind a shadow that would haunt everyone who sought simplicity in a world built on complex cruelty. Because in the end, Itachi's story is not about what he did, it's about what he endured. Every lie, every moment of silence, every calculated cruelty was a layer of protection, not malice. And maybe that's the real tragedy. A man who carried the weight of everyone else's lives while being remembered as the one who destroyed them. And maybe, just maybe, that is why this story hurts so deeply. Because in the end, he was just human, a brother, a son. A man who chose to disappear behind a mask of hatred, so someone he loved could live freely. And when we realize the cost of that choice, we see the truth of our own hearts. That love, at its deepest, often asks for the unimaginable. This is the shadow that lingers after Itachi's death. It whispers in moments of quiet reflection. It asks us to consider the sacrifices we overlook, the pain we accept without question, the silent acts of devotion that go unseen, unthanked and misunderstood. Because in every life, there is an Itachi, someone who endures more than they show, who hides behind cruelty, who sacrifices themselves so others can breathe. And recognizing that, truly recognizing it, changes the way we see sacrifice, love, and humanity itself.